He tied himself to beer kegs that may still be in the yard. And he floated in the water just for 3 days. And I just kept talking to him and telling him, God gonna make a way, God gonna make a way, you're gonna make it. And he was saying, I'm so tired. I said, I know you're tired. And I wanted to feed him when I had, but I couldn't get to him because I didn't know how to swim.
Yeah. They were going in the white neighborhood. They didn't care about me. They were going somewhere else. I kept on trying to flag them down. Man, we had lights. Everything trying to stop them people did not come in. They came in a full day and gave me some water. I was in a boat. I went to holler. They dropped the water so hard, they tried to sink my boat.
I hate the way they portray us in the media. If you see a black family, it says they're looting. See a white family, it says they're looking for food. And you know it's been 5 days because most of the people are black. And even for me to complain about, I would be a hypocrite because I've tried to turn away from the TV because it's too hard to watch. I've even been shopping before even giving a donation. So now I'm calling my business manager right now to see what is the biggest amount I can give, and just to imagine if I was down there, and those are my people down there. So anybody out there that wants to do anything that we can help with the setup, the way America is set up to help the poor, the black people, the less well off as slow as possible. I mean, this is Red Cross is doing everything they can. We already realize a lot of the people that could help are at war right now, fighting another way, and they've given them permission to go down and shoot us.
And subtle, but in even many ways more profoundly devastating, is the lasting damage to the survivors' will to rebuild and remain in the area. The destruction of the spirit of the people of southern Louisiana and Mississippi may end up being...
That was not a hurricane. That was not a natural disaster. That was mass genocide. That was all about a land grab. That was all about gentrification. This reminds me of exactly what happened in Oscarville, Georgia, when it was flooded and they created Lake Lanier. 20 years later, and the truth is finally starting to come to the light. Everything the media told us 20 years ago was an absolute lie. Ryan Coogler just recently came out with a documentary regarding Hurricane Katrina, and it exposed so many things that a lot of us knew for so long. Not only that, there are so many survivors speaking out on TikTok.
A week after the storm hit, NBC aired a telethon. Yes. Asking for help for the victims of Katrina. We had celebrities coming in to ask for money, and I remember it vividly because I hosted it. And at one part of the evening, I introduced Kanye West. Were you watching?
Nope.
You remember what he said?
Yes, I did.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
Call me racist.
Well, what he said was, George Bush doesn't care about black people.
That's because he's a racist. And I didn't appreciate it then, and I don't appreciate it now. It's one thing to say, you know, I don't appreciate the way he's handled his business. It's another thing to say this man's a racist. I resent it. It's not true. And it was one of the most disgusting moments of my presidency.
This from the book. I faced a lot of criticism as president. I didn't like hearing people claim that I lied about Iraq's weapons of mass destruction or cut taxes to benefit the rich. But the suggestion that I was racist because of the response to Katrina represented an all-time low.
Yeah, still feel that way as you read those words. Felt them when I heard them, felt them when I wrote them, and I felt them when I'm listening to them.
You say you told Laura at the time it was the worst moment of your presidency.
Yeah.
I wonder if some people are going to read that, and they might give you some heat for that. And the reason is this.
I don't care.
Well, here's the reason. You're not saying that the worst moment in your presidency was watching the misery in Louisiana. You're saying it was when someone insulted you because of it.
I also...
We go baby out here. They don't have no formula, no water, and they want us to survive out here. Where's people? Where's the mayor?
Report of thousands of people in the convention center who don't have food and water.
No food, no water. People in here are dying from not eating. I can't stand it here anymore. I can't stand it. I don't ever want to go back here anymore.
When you're poor in America, you're not free. And when you're poor, you learn to have patience. You lose choices when you're poor. Yeah, you don't pick where your kids go to school. You don't pick where you live.
Are natural disasters avoidable? Are they possibly preventable? Well, there is a theory that they are not. That natural disasters come in the silence of sleep, with no warning and no way to prevent it. This is a tale of two natural disasters, two hurricanes, Betsy and Katrina, the astrological placements of these two hurricanes, and how these twin storms ripped apart New Orleans, the city of magic, and some would even say of so much spirit. Some storms arrive like messengers. They don't just cherish and take movement, but they tear down streets and homes. They rip open wounds and leave symbols behind. For New Orleans, two names carry so much weight, so much history, and even so much grief. Betsy and Katrina. The hurricane of Betsy came first in 1965, and she was called the $1 billion Betsy, the first hurricane to cause $1 billion in damage. She struck New Orleans with her winds, her air, and of course her water. But it was the water that really left a presence. The levees of New Orleans failed in the lower 9th Ward, a very dominant black working class neighborhood, and it was drowned. It was a warning sign, a chance to see where the city's most vulnerable were left unprotected and uncared for. Then we take a look about 40 years later as we fast forward to 2005. Hurricane Katrina, a lot more stronger and a bunch more deadlier. She carried the same message, but only louder. The levees broke again, and this time the whole world watched as 80% of New Orleans was flooded. Thousands stranded on rooftops, families trapped in the Superdome, communities uprooted, and families even losing family members. Many never to return back to New Orleans. It was seen as a major disaster, a catastrophe. It wasn't just nature, but it was neglect, inequality, and also the shadow of our own racism rising like the water. Betsy and Katrina were separated by 40 years, a number with a very heavy spiritual meaning. In scripture and mythology, 40 marks trials, cleansings, and transformation. 40 days, 40 years rocks so much energy. As many of you guys know, I have done a lot of research on things that have occurred in the number of 40, just like the children who were lost in the forest. 40 days always has some type of significance, and so does 40 years. Betsy was the warning storm, while Katrina was the reckoning and the ultimate disaster. Two watery goddesses demanding attention, demanding the city and the nation pay attention. Both revealed the same truth, that there is a very thin line of class, economic power, and also with race. A power that is carved deep into this country's bloodstream, where it seems that certain populations are always neglected. Both revealed the same truths, and these truths can't be ignored. Together as a collective, we must open our eyes and see the symbolization that Katrina and Betsy both brought. They symboled a cycle, a circle of unhealed wounds and repeated lessons that continue. These lessons are faced upon us for us to see what has happened and what could even potentially happen again. The first hurricane. Hurricane Betsy was one of the most infamous storms of the 20th century. This is the full breakdown of what we know. It occurred in 1965 around the Atlantic, and it reached a Category 3, the strength of it at its all-time peak. Sometimes Betsy was called the $1 billion Betsy for being known as the first U.S. hurricane to cause over $1 billion in damages. The impact was formulated around August 27th, 1965, in the tropical Atlantic. The bath took a wide course, moved through the Bahamas, and brushed over Florida, then struck the central U.S. Gulf Coast. The landfall occurred on September 9th, 1965, near the Grand Isles of Louisiana, with winds around 155 miles per hour. The destruction that left Louisiana was devastated, especially in New Orleans. The storm surged overtopped levees, flooding large parts of the city. Some areas were underwater for days. Florida and the Florida Keys were hit hard earlier in September with major wind and surge damage. The casualties was around 76 deaths, so believed. But the economic loss that this hurricane brought was over $1.5 billion, and this was in 1965. So destruction was very much the whole scheme of this hurricane. The legacy of Betsy reshaped how the U.S. prepared for hurricanes. The disaster in New Orleans exposed flaws in the levee system, something that sadly echoed about 40 years later with Hurricane Katrina, which occurred in 2005, because the destruction of it, while same, it was way worse for Katrina. Hurricane Katrina occurred in 2005, peaked as a Category 5, made landfall as a Category 3, and of course, it started off the Atlantic. The fatalities are still a little sketchy. At least 1,800 people, estimation of deaths and fatalities have occurred with this hurricane, but some even say that it is higher. The damage alone was over $125 billion, making it the costliest U.S. hurricane of all time. The path and the strength of Hurricane Katrina formed on August 23rd of 2005 over the Bahamas. The first landfall occurred in Florida, a Category 3, and then traveled through the Gulf of Mexico, where it rapidly intensified to a Category 5, with winds as high as 175 miles per hour. The final landfall occurred on August 29th of 2005 near Louisiana, Bursa, Louisiana. The strong Category 3 impact left New Orleans and Louisiana completely devastated. This is the most iconic disaster of a hurricane the country has ever seen. Levee failure was the peak of the actual hurricane's dishevelment. The levees failed, which were engineered by the U.S. Army Corps Engineering, led to 80% of New Orleans flooding. Many residents, particularly from lower economic communities and were predominantly Black and African Americans, were stranded without any food, any aid, any place of rescue, or any type of resources. Unfortunately for the residents of New Orleans, many of them were strapped for cash in some ways. They came from lower economic backgrounds, and being able to evacuate was just not feasible. To leave the state was just not as easy as the government or city officials planned for it to be. Without aid, many people traveled to the Superdome and the Convention Center. Thousands of people were trapped in their homes or even on rooftops. The Mississippi coast cities like Bilox and Gulfport were basically destroyed with the storm, and it surged up to 28 feet high. Literally, the city was underwater. Alabama and Florida panhandled some of the storm as well, and also experienced a significant flooding and wind damage. It is believed that the fatalities is over 1,800 people, mostly occurring in Louisiana and Mississippi. The displacement was over 1 million people were displaced from their homes, one of the largest migrations in U.S. history. There is so much controversy when it comes to the response. FEMA and federal response were widely criticized as slow and mismanaged. President George Bush's administration faced tons of backlash for failing to act quickly. The racial and class inequality was experienced. Katrina exposed deep systematic inequalities with lower economical backgrounds. Elderly people and African American residents were the ones who were disproportionately most affected. There was definitely some engineering challenges, and there was definitely some areas that sparked major redesign when it came to the New Orleans levees and flood protection systems. The policies shifted, and basically FEMA went under reforms after its failures. The cultural impact sparked tons of discussion and conversations about race, poverty, and climate resilience. It inspired books and documentaries on many channels, and even it was seen in areas of music and mythology. Many survivors never returned, reshaping New Orleans demographics. Katrina remains as one of the most symbolized natural disasters and ultimate human failures upon our nation, a reminder of climate's ultimate vulnerability and how natural disasters are the true potential enemy. Government's responsibility and lack of requirements to create a safe and productive community for not just white Americans, but also for Black Americans as well. The resilience of tragedy echoes the streets of New Orleans, but the similarities tends to echo as both occurrences seem so familiar. Hurricane Betsy in 1965 and Hurricane Katrina in 2005 weren't just natural disasters. Many considered them symbolisms that echoed through history and revealed the deep, dark truths, not just about New Orleans or America, but basically the cycles of power. There are definitely some parallels that can't be denied. Both were complete devastations and complete failures by the community structure. For instance, Betsy in 1965, the first modern day hurricane that flooded New Orleans, they both had levees that broke. New Orleans' overtopping levees, especially in the lower Ninth Ward, which is prominently working class African American community. And then Katrina in 2005, history repeated itself. Levees failed and caused a catastrophe, again drowning out the lower Ninth Ward. The symbolisms of cycles of neglect, of course attacking the most vulnerable, both economically, racially, and also the ones who have the least resources. It is the shadow wounds that resurfaced 40 years later. Betsy's was the first warning, a foreshadowing of a chance to possibly reform. Unfortunately, the nation did not do that, and especially in New Orleans. Katrina was the reckoning of ignoring the potential of what could happen from a natural disaster. When ignored, lessons are finally learned, so they say. As we are approaching the 20 years of Hurricane Katrina, many channels are showcasing documentaries about this horrific event. This sparked my interest as I was a young mother first watching all of the devastation that Hurricane Katrina left. After watching a documentary, I believe on Hulu, I then discovered about Hurricane Betsy. I thought it was quite peculiar that they were 40 years apart. I also wanted to look at some of the astrology of these two events. While they say everything is in patterns and significance, I would think two events that were so shapely to the U.S.'s natural disaster history would have some remarkings of resemblance. After reviewing their charts, a few things stood out to me. They both had a sun in Virgo during the time of the major catastrophe. Virgo is about the infrastructure, also health and services and the systems that keep society functioning. When the storms like Betsy and Katrina both hit under a Virgo sun, they had a symbolic energy of failures. Also, the levees breaking. How was the government prepared, and how were the communities prepared as well? Virgo also has a significance of purification. In both cases, the storms came as a cosmic disaster, possibly cleansing away the hidden truths or the hidden secrets that racism and neglect is still continuing thousands and thousands of years from slavery. Another thing that stood out to me about these two hurricanes were they both had a water moon. Hurricane Betsy had a moon in Pisces, and Hurricane Katrina had a moon in Cancer. I thought it was very significant that both of them had water moons, as it was water and wind that caused so much emotional damage and also massive destruction. What was also interesting is both of these hurricanes both had a Venus in Libra. Venus in Libra to me represents balance, harmony, and justice. It is seen as a beautiful aspect, but it also has an illusion of balance, and when something is out of alignment, it almost really shows its face. With Venus in Libra during both storms, there's a symbolism of social inequalities being unmasked. Who were actually the ones being protected, and who were left behind? Both Betsy and Katrina hit the poor, lower economic communities, predominantly the African American neighborhoods, and they were hit the hardest, showing the imbalance in society scales. Venus also rules the energy of value and beauty, and we see that Betsy was called the billion-dollar storm, and then Katrina, 40 years later, basically stole that title by becoming one of the most costliest natural disasters of its time. There is definitely an energy around Venus and money and energies of wealth, and both of them grabbed so much economic damage that they really took that energy quite, I guess you could say, to their benefit. I feel with a Virgo sun and a Libra being structured with Venus, there's a pattern of structure and service that the Virgo brings. Also Libra, the energy of injustice and balance. Together, these placements symbolically heighten the reckoning of order and fairness. Both of the storms asked our system and pushed our system to the top of its breaking point. Truly serving all people was not something that was done. Everybody saw the equality and the neglect that occurred with this Libra energy. This is definitely tragically a failure. Both storms standing in this karmic reputation or this karmic alignment 40 years apart makes me wonder the arriving of the same astrological energy that somewhat feels very similar and echoing the truths of cycles and lessons integrated and also being ignored. 40 years later, here comes Katrina, a spiritually significant and also disastrous-like event. In the Bible, 40 marks trials, testing, and transformation. Some even see it as the deep cleanse. 40 days, 40 nights of floods, 40 years in the desert. Katrina was the second trial after Betsy's warning that was so neglected. Hurricane Betsy met its peak on September 9th of 1965 in New Orleans, Louisiana. Her birth chart goes a little something like this for this billion-dollar baby. Her sun is in Virgo at 17 degrees. Her moon is in Pisces at 8 degrees. It is believed that her actual, I guess you could say, time of birth would be at 10 p.m. Her Mercury is in Virgo, and her Venus is in Libra with a Mars in Scorpio. Jupiter in Gemini at 28 degrees, making her so popular. Saturn in Pisces at 13 degrees, and Uranus in Virgo at 15 degrees. It is believed that her Uranus is in her 4th house in the energy of Virgo, following her Sun in her 5th and also her Mercury in her 4th. The area of destruction in the space of home. Neptune in Scorpio, making everything a reality in the energies of secrets and transformation, lying deep in her 6th house of wellness. Also, we see that her Pluto is in Virgo and her Chiron is in Pisces. Her North Node is in Gemini and her ascendant is believed to be a Gemini. Her midheaven is in Aquarius. While she does have some strong aspects like a sun that conjuncts Uranus, and a sun sextiles in Neptune. The sun conjuncts Uranus lets me know that she is definitely wild. She is one mean and tough cookie. She is a little bit reckless and she is very unpredictable. Another thing that stands out is that she is active and she is strong. When something like this happens, there's a huge commitment around responsibilities and negotiations. But unfortunately, her energy is more about destruction. Another thing that stood out to me about Betsy's chart was that she had a sun conjunct Pluto. Her sun in the 4th house with Pluto in Virgo in the 4th house as well. This energy feels very dominant around destruction and emotional security that feels very unsettling to the family unit. It also seems very controlling and centered around causing mass destruction and even exposure. And some would even say maybe a defense or secrets behind the walls of the home. She also had a Saturn in Pisces that was opposite her Uranus. Her Uranus is in the 4th house as well, but her Pisces is in the 10th house, allowing the collective and allowing her career to basically being that energy of constriction and the energy of movement around spiritual emphasis, consciousness, and awareness. I do think that this energy almost came to a halt as many saw the warning signs but chose to ignore them. And while Hurricane Betsy does have the billion-dollar baby title, she doesn't even come close to the destruction that Hurricane Katrina brought. Hurricane Katrina's birth date is August 29th, 2005, believed to be about 6:10 a.m. in Louisiana. Her chart goes a little something like this. She is a sun in Virgo in 6 degrees. This energy is surrounding her 1st house. She is also a moon in Cancer at the 11th house at 8 degrees. We see this infinity sign, this energy of sensitivity, this energy of leaving a legacy in the area of the collective's perspective. We also see that there is a vulnerability in this alignment, especially with the 11th house around emotional and also society type arenas. She might be centered off of security and big groups of friends, but she did bring big groups of friends together in the Superdome and also in the convention center. But what's interesting about this alignment is she has an energy that feels like she makes herself overzealous or puts herself out there just a little bit too much. She's also very detached in certain aspects where it is centered around her collective circle. She likes to get everybody together, but then she kind of leaves them hanging. Also, with the moon in Cancer in the 11th house, it makes me see that there is a big vulnerability that she has with her friends, that she often feels guarded and is only out looking for just her own well-being. The Mercury in Leo at 19 degrees is in the 12th house. Also, the Venus in Libra in the 2nd house lets me know that she is gentle in all areas, where she does desire everything direct and clear as an expression. She sees it, she wants it, she retrieves it, she gathers it, she gains it. She's very much interested in making a name for herself, and she made quite a name, I would say. She expressed fully how she feels in spiritual areas of realms and levels and movements. She's very strong, and she is very, very entitled to what she wants. She also has a Mars in Taurus, which Mars being aligned in constellations that represent the earth element is always known to bring some kind of catastrophe when it comes to rooted soil. The Mars in Taurus is in the 9th house. This lets me know that it dishevels and even causes an uproar with area of adventure and even being very impulsive. A Mars in Taurus often makes me think of energies of fire, but this time it was great wind, coming, knocking, and watering down any hope of life. Often when we have a Mars in Taurus, there is a big pursuit that many people cannot obtain. But the 9th house lets me know that this creative energy almost feels like a destruction. We can't keep up with this type of energy for most people. It's almost like an unreachable goal. But a Mars in Taurus, especially in the 9th house, will make sure it fucking gets done. The Venus in Libra lays quite nice with the 2nd house, containing everything that it wants. The Jupiter in Libra fits it quite nice in the 2nd house as well. A Jupiter in Libra often and a Jupiter in the 2nd house also has a reputation of receiving large amounts of money, possibly a billionaire in a making, one might say. If she was a human, I'm sure she would have a white poodle lapdog and be rolling around in a Bentley, but instead she's a hurricane goddess, one who causes mass destructions. While many people try to emulate her, they can't really do it. She has a gift of taking everything that she wants, and she will continue to use it. One might say she makes money, but really she is stealing it. She's creating an area where the ease almost feels like a flow that comes so easily. It's also like she has an energy around anything and everything that she ultimately desires. The Jupiter in Libra in the 2nd house lets me know that she makes connections quite well. If she wasn't a hurricane, she would probably be somebody centered around making a lot of wealthy decisions. When we think of limiting areas of leadership, she definitely has her blockages, as she has a Saturn in Leo in the 12th house. She also has her Uranus in Pisces at 8 degrees as the energy of legacy continues in the 7th house. She is seen as bringing harmony, but also bring some mass destruction. She is very rebellious and restless. She also has an energy that wants to stimulate not just others, but also herself. I would definitely see her with having problems in her marriage. Unfortunately, she doesn't have a marriage unless you conclude to the mass destruction of unity that she has brought to the collective. She has an interesting perspective as she thinks that everything should be her way. Neptune in Aquarius speaks volume. She's rather confusing when you look at the energy in the 6th house. The Neptune in Aquarius lets me know that she probably has some type of mental illness. She might be centered around some type of psychomatic unwilling diagnosis. She's causing some dissatisfaction to not just others, but with her own delusions. She is very much centered in possibly specializing in other different confinements. For instance, she wouldn't just go out and go to the doctor. She's going to go see a witch doctor. Her illusions and disillusions make people think of what could possibly happen next. Her involvement of pushing people to their ultimate nightmares comes true. She has an energy that awakens the collective to the reality of what is coming their way. It is seen in energies of wellness, as it lays in the 6th house, knowing that we are also vulnerable to things we cannot change. Her Pluto lays in Sagittarius in the 4th house, and it could feel like a suffering. Pluto in the 4th house sometimes feels like an obstacle, very controlling in some ways, an unconscious motivation to dishevel the family, and it often feels a little bit isolated. It is believed that she has a Chiron in Capricorn and a North Node in Aries, which is kind of interesting as we are centered around the North Node in Aries. The ascendant is in Leo and the midheaven is in Taurus. Her aspects speak great volumes. She has a sun that sextiles her moon, also a sun in opposite of Uranus, very similar to Betsy. She also has a moon trined Uranus. A moon trined Uranus is very individual, it's very rebellious, and it could even be seen as a little bit problematic, but it is very much studied in the areas of what we would say higher realms. She also has a Mercury in a strong sextile with Jupiter, which is interesting because she would be a great teacher. She would also be somebody who is teaching us a lesson, and as we see, we followed to neglect the first warning, and then she came with a warning that we could not ignore. We also see that she has a Mars squared that Neptune in Aquarius. The Mars squared with the Neptune feels almost mystical. It feels like a strong influence where people will want to know more about her. And as we see, she shows her guard, but she also disconnects where we only can imagine her true potential or if she will return. She also has a Venus trine Neptune. Now that Venus trine Neptune in the 2nd house with the energy of the Neptune in Aquarius lets me know that her personality is very strong. She's very imaginative. If she was coming back to Earth from the skies, she would make sure we would sing her name for centuries more. She is very, very centered around her own areas of relationship and confidence. She knows her purpose and she will use it well. She also has a Chiron strong trine with her midheaven. The Chiron strong trine with her midheaven will definitely have issues in areas of seeing authority. She is the authority. She has an enormous energy that cannot be contained. And while many people try to contain her or even prevent, her power is like an urge and she must show it off. Hurricane Betsy and Katrina weren't just hurricanes. They were cosmic echoes, arriving 40 years apart, with the same celestial signatures. A sun in Virgo, Venus in Libra, and 2 water moons. Both tore open the same wounds and even the same energy, flooding not only the streets of New Orleans, but also the illusions of stability and fairness in this country. Virgo asked, have you built any systems stronger? Can you take this energy that I am about to bring? Can you hear the goddess and serve and protect like you should? While Libra asked, are the scales of justice truly balanced? Is this energy equal? In 1965, Betsy gave us a warning. In 2005, Katrina delivered the reckoning. And together they remain and remind us that there is a deeper truth out there. Until we heal the imbalances and until we heal the inner structures and honor equality and treat everybody as equal people, this cycle will continue to occur. While we can't prevent natural disasters, we could definitely be aware of them and the energies of inequality that tend to occur just a little bit more frequent with people who have different social economic statuses and even some area of appearance. Water is both the destroyer and the purifier. And although Betsy and Katrina cause a massive reckoning, it becomes a mirror reflecting back the shadow that we cannot ignore. I want to thank everybody for listening to this podcast. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to share this with your witchy bestie. And have a great day. Bye.